Could the Miami Dolphins get bad news on Christian Wilkins? Yes, Christian Wilkins. Plus, should the Dolphins sign linebacker Devin White in NFL free agency after he was released by the Philadelphia Eagles earlier in the week? Before we get into today's show, make sure you are following us over on Instagram because we are posting daily Dolphins updates, 24/7 coverage. You also get short form content on the Miami Dolphins. We currently have 417 followers, but we're trying to get to 500 by the next game in Week 7 against the Colts for the Dolphins. Go give us a follow. Everyone that follows us on today's show will get a shout-out later next week. All right, could bad news coming for the Miami Dolphins with Christian Wilkins? Because, as y'all know, the Dolphins get comp picks for when they lose players if they leave and get big contracts elsewhere, like Christian Wilkins got with the Las Vegas Raiders. But there also is a formula that goes into this. It's not just the contract. It also is determined from other aspects like playing time. Well, Wilkins is injured, and it ultimately could, not would, it could affect the compensation pick that Miami ultimately gets. And you might be wondering, how is it even determined? Well, the formula the NFL uses to dole out compensatory picks is a sum of points between API, that someone gets paid per year in their contract they got with a new team, snaps played, that's where it comes into play for Christian Wilkins, and awards as well. Now, some of these things hold more weight than others, so don't get it twisted. The contract that Wilkins signed ultimately holds more weight than the snaps he plays, which is good because, well, his contract is very, very big. This is what he signed with the Raiders in NFL free agency back in March. He signed a 4-year, $110 million deal, and if you are just unaware of what he got, it's a pretty hefty contract, man. It was a record-setting deal for someone at his position, and we love C. Wilk, right? We loved him here in Miami, but Miami just simply couldn't pay this contract when he hit the open market. Now, you might be able to say on Chris Grier, he should have extended him before that. Maybe he should have, but and he goes to the market and gets offered this from the Raiders. There's no way the Dolphins could have matched that. And honestly, Wilkins has been not as impactful for the Raiders in the first 5 games of the season in comparison to what he did for Miami last season. Many people are saying, not me, that he might be a Zach Sealer merchant because Zach Sealer is still performing at a very high level and Wilkins is having a little bit of a downer year in comparison to what he did last year. But the reason why we're showing you his statistics about that is to show you the player that left and why it's important that he got that contract, but also this right here in terms of this injury occurring over the weekend for the Raiders. Christian Wilkins is out indefinitely after undergoing surgery to repair Jones fracture he suffered on Sunday. He obviously signed a massive deal with the Raiders, and he'll head to IR, but that injury to his foot could ultimately lead to him missing a very extended period of time. And when we talked about it earlier about how the formula for comp picks comes from money, snaps, awards. Well, the snaps could potentially impact if it stays a 3rd rounder, which it's projected as, or also a 4th rounder if the snaps don't help him stay in the 3rd round. And before I talk more about this situation, are you worried about the Dolphins dropping a round with their comp pick, going from 3rd to 4th? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Let me know your honest thoughts down in the comment section. Well, we do have a host here at the Raiders Report about who and when he could possibly return. And talking to Mitch Rohloff, who hosts our Raiders Report, he told me Wilkins likely could be back around week 11 or 12. So IR is going to force him to miss 4 games. So he'll miss week 6, week 7, week 8, week 9. Regardless, the Raiders have a week 10 bye. So the earliest he could return is week 11. That is 5 weeks from now. And now who knows if the Raiders will ultimately do that? Why, you might ask? Well, if the Raiders season is practically over and say they're 2-7, 2-8, and they have no faith to come back this year, well, maybe they hold Wilkins out and say, don't worry about your foot. And then if he only plays in 5 games the entire year, maybe that formula doesn't give Miami a 3rd-round pick like it was ultimately expected to. Now, I do want to play positive Rolly, if you will, because I think the contract that Christian Wilkins signed with the Raiders was so large, so record-setting, that even if he doesn't play a snap for the rest of the game, the formula weighs the contract that he left on much more big and impactful than the snaps you play the following year because of injuries potentially. I think it's still very likely that he ultimately gets a third-round pick for Miami, which is important because when Chris Grier made the trade to get Jalen Wright at the draft and he traded a future third to get him in the fourth, he was probably calculating, well, I can afford to trade my own third-round pick to get right now because I'm going to get 2 third-round picks next year for losing Christian Wilkins and Robert Hunt to the contracts they did. And as of right now, even with the idea of Christian Wilkins being out for the remainder of the year, according to Over the Cap, and I've looked at some things on Spotrac as well, 2 third-round picks are still projected for the Miami Dolphins because of Robert Hunt leaving and going to the Panthers on a 5-year, $100 million deal, but also Christian Wilkins going to the Raiders on the contract that he was shown earlier in the video. All right, we're going to get into Devin White now in just a second, but make sure you are subscribed because we will update you on everything surrounding the Miami Dolphins. Help us get to 62K subs. We were under 300 away from that milestone. Let's get there ASAP. But we're also sponsored, and I'm remiss to tell you about Gametime, the #1 way to get your tickets. And they just make your life so much easier when you're going to a live event, whether it be a sporting event, concert, comedy show. It does not matter. Make sure you get started with Gametime because they have a great feature called Gametime Picks that filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. I use Gametime for every event I go to. I'm actually going to watch my Mets play either the Dodgers or Padres in the NLCS next Thursday. I use Gametime to purchase my tickets because they gave me the lowest price guaranteed. They gave me a panoramic view of my seat in the app before I purchase so I can see exactly where I'm sitting at Citi Field as they try to make the World Series. And I implore you to do the same because it's lowest price guaranteed. It just makes your life so much easier, I promise you that. So download Gametime today. Use code CHATSPORTS when you create an account to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. That link is in the comments and descriptions of today's video. Appreciate Gametime for sponsoring today's show. I use them all the time. What time is it? It's game time. All right, let's move on to the second half of today's show. And is it possible for the Dolphins to go out and sign Devin White, the middle linebacker who recently was released by the Philadelphia Eagles and did not play a snap for Philly after being signed in free agency? Well, here's where the linebacker depth chart stands right now. You can see the middle linebackers, off-ball linebackers, as well as the edge rushers. Now, we're not talking edge rushers, but important to note that Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips are both on IR and PUP right now. And that's your top 2 guys. But when we specify on the off-ball linebackers, David Long Jr., Jordyn Brooks, Anthony Walker Jr., Duke Riley, and Channing Tindall, all your list. And we got to be honest, you can point to the interior defensive line not having a Christian Wilkins-type guy to help defend and eat blocks to allow linebackers to pursue. But the Dolphins' defense has been really good this year outside of one aspect, and it's really been the run defense. They've been good in coverage. They've been good in the air. They've been good in third down rate, limiting their opponents to points. But the one knock on them is that they've struggled against the run. They're 19th in the NFL, allowing 125.8 yards per game. Now, some of that was very much inflated by a big game from Tennessee in Week 4 and a couple big runs from James Cook in that Buffalo game. But regardless, it has not been the prettiest season thus far for the Dolphins' run defense. So many fans are wondering if it could be possible to go out and sign a linebacker, specifically Devin White. Well, I think it's important before we look at Devin White to look at the in-house guys and how they're graded out in the run defense department this season thus far. And it really hasn't been that good. David Long Jr. and Anthony Walker Jr. are both in the mid-50s in terms of their run defense grade. The only one that's had a solid grade is Jordyn Brooks at 69.6. Very nice. But Jordyn Brooks has also been your best linebacker this year. David Long Jr. missed a game and was limited with a hamstring injury. But when you watch it, Jordyn Brooks has a pair of sacks as well. He comes crashing down in that line and actually has had some really good moments in pass coverage as well. I'll never forget that game against the Bills where he covered Curtis Samuel, who was in the backfield, a wide receiver, by the way, and ran a wheel route trying to go for a touchdown one-on-one with Jordyn Brooks, and Brooks was able to defend it and get a PBU. He has been a godsend after you signed him off the free agency list where he was with the Seahawks last year to be your Jerome Baker replacement. Jordyn Brooks has been a really good piece of this defense, and I can't blame him for any of the issues they've had thus far. But could they add Devin White to replace Duke Riley or Channing Tindall? That remains to be seen. And before we dive into Devin White, be Chris Grier for me. Answer this question. Should the Dolphins sign a linebacker? Type S for sign, type P for pass. Let me know your thoughts on the matter down in the comment section. Well, Devin White has a historic career, and he's been someone that is in the public eye for a while due to his time with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was a mainstay in that defense that won a championship for Tampa after being a first-round pick out of LSU. You see the numbers. They've been solid. He can do it in the run-stopping department, 40 TFLs. He can rush the passer as a blitzer with 23 sacks. And that's been his calling card, is actually his speed, his side-to-side ability to move around the defense. But if we're really going to dive into the player, and I know a lot of people are going to say, yeah, man, we should sign him for the cheap. Absolutely. He's been a solid linebacker. This is like a Pro Bowl type guy. Well, I don't think he's been that good. And listen, PFF isn't a godsend. It isn't the truth, and their word isn't exactly what the story tells. But I do find it fascinating that he's been one of the worst graded linebackers, and in his entire career, this is his career PFF averages across the board. He's been 44 in terms of his overall. A horrific run defender, according to PFF. They call him a coverage guy because he's fast, but he's not able to hit the holes and maybe get people to the ground in those tough holes when you meet around the line of scrimmage. But his coverage grade isn't even that high, according to Pro Football Focus. Tackling grade is his best aspect, but the numbers on Devin White aren't as good as people might think they are because of his name value. And everyone knew first-round pick, part of that championship defense with Levante David and that linebacker duo. Sure, he had a good year that season. They ultimately won it all. But if we're going to be honest, his name is just a flashy aspect now. It's really nothing special. I don't think he adds that much to this defense that in a linebacker core that, sure, maybe they can be better in the run-stopping department. But I think they've been good in pass coverage, and I think that's been huge. Jordyn Brooks has been awesome. David Long Jr., as he gets healthier, I think will be better and better in his second season as a Miami Dolphin. I don't know if Devin White is really the answer here, and I think fans might want him just to kind of make a move and get a flashy move to add to this roster. But I don't see Devin White as someone that comes in and really transcends this offense whatsoever. It's just a name at this point. But overall, when you think about adding to this group and making this Dolphins roster better to try to get into the postseason, cutting off a bye and make these next 6 games worth it as they have a really easy schedule, linebacker isn't the top need. The top need on this group is clearly edge rusher and interior offensive line. Now, I could argue interior defensive line as well to help kind of clog up some of those running lanes and have a nose tackle as well, but that's a story for a different day. It's clear to me that the Dolphins' pass rush could use help after Jalen Phillips is out for the year, and we've seen Bradley Chubb not return yet, so I think it would be important to get some more pass rushing, but as well as a protector on the interior offensive line, as the O-line has been the worst part of this Dolphins team. I just wouldn't put off-ball linebackers one of the top needs for the squad, which is why I'm probably passing on Devin White. All right, make sure you are subscribed to the channel because, hey, guess what? If I'm wrong and Chris Grier ultimately does go out and get Devin White, we will have you covered with a video. Lock us in here at Dolphins Today. We're dropping daily content and are live for every Dolphins game. Help us get to 62K, under 300 away.